There are sectors to develop, infrastructures to build, people to feed, Honorable Chair. Investing in harnessing renewable energy technology is literally biting off more than a check.
Is an investment, is not a luxury for the rich, but instead an imperative for the poor.
GrenLec, energizing our Grenada.
Welcome to the quarterfinals of the 2015 GrenLec Secondary Schools debate. The Anglican High School versus MacDonald College. The motion, be it resolved that government should provide free wireless service in public spaces. The first proposition speaker.
It is not only a government's obligation to provide services, but to see that they are provided. Former New York Governor Mario Cuomo. Good afternoon, all. Judges, government should provide free wireless service in public spaces. As first speaker, I will outline the government's role and responsibility with respect to the provision of public goods such as wireless service. My second speaker will further justify our stance, while my remaining colleagues will remove any doubt against whether or not Wi-Fi should be implemented in free public spaces. Permit me to define key terms. Government is a group of people who administers public policy and exercises executive, political, and sovereign power through customs, institutions, and laws within a state. Provide is to make available something wanted or needed. Webster Dictionary defines Wi-Fi as a facility which allows persons and devices to connect to the internet or communicate wirelessly within a particular area. PenSpace Online defines a public space as a gathering spot or part of a neighborhood, special district, waterfront, or other area within the public realm that helps promote social interaction and a sense of community. Possible examples may include parks, marketplaces, malls, and sites within public buildings. Essentially, judges, the government should make available Wi-Fi service in spaces openly accessed by the public for the purpose of encouraging the social, economic, and educational development of its people. Honorable judges, one may ask, why should the government be tasked with the role of providing free Wi-Fi? According to the United Nations Development Programme, the role of the government is to establish a conducive environment for economic growth in its respective domain. Judges, one cannot dispute the fact that the current economic reality is one marked by a heavy reliance on the internet. Moreover, the high demand for free digital connectivity mandates a dire need for Wi-Fi, which, by its very nature, generates economic growth. It will allow persons from all walks of life opportunities which would have otherwise been hindered by dollars and cents. In fact, UNESCO in its publication, Science Agenda Framework for Action explains, it is crucial that governments of developing countries such as ours initiate policies and programs that would strengthen the capacity of its people to utilize the internet and ensure national development. Judges, it is the government that is responsible for this type of policy implementation. But why free service? Free wireless service provided by the government must not be seen as a costly venture, but as an economic development engine that can generate revenue and influence the innovation trajectory of a country. Consider the Gulf Wi-Fi project implemented in Hong Kong. Minimal cost, maximum benefits. Over 65 countries have since mimicked this venture. In fact, the International Telecommunications Union, who endorses the provision of free Wi-Fi service, states that not only do the returns on such an initiative exceed that of its costs, but it also strengthens national development in areas such as education, communication, finance, and private sector development. Judges, Wi-Fi in public spaces has the potential to boost our tourism sector. Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell asserts that public Wi-Fi will help attract tourists to our islands, since travelers often yearn for the internet access in public spaces as a result of its efficiency and cost-effectiveness in communication. How about education? The availability of Wi-Fi in public spaces will facilitate educational development for our people, since it allows free access to countless online educational resources. Additionally, it creates the environment for our people to open small businesses, improve existing businesses, and develop e-commerce. Wouldn't it be great for our fish vendors and farmers to be afforded opportunities to market and sell their products at the click of a button? Alarmingly, statistics received from the NTRC revealed that in 2013, a mere 15% of persons in Grenada had access to the internet. With such low penetration rates, the need for the provision of free Wi-Fi in public spaces is even more paramount. Just as electricity over time became a public good and a human right, dear judges, so will Wi-Fi, with a strategic push by governments towards technological advancement. The beloved Nelson Mandela said it best: to deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. Honorable judges, we submit, therefore, that government is without any doubt duty-bound to provide free Wi-Fi in public spaces.
The first opposition speaker.
Be it resolved that governments should provide free wireless in public spaces. Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, sorry, this side understands the benefit of total wireless coverage, and thus, trying to convince us of its value is like trying to convince an NNP to wear a green jersey. We are already sold on the idea. Opponents, we are the converted. What we are not sold on is that government should provide it free. This smells like trouble. Big, big trouble. Our opponent's first speaker did an incredible job in defining the key terms of this debate. However, in shaping our opposition to this moot, it is critical that we provide some definitions of our own. The World Business Dictionary defines free as costing nothing in terms of money. To provide means to supply or to give something that is wanted or needed. Having governments provide free wireless in public spaces has too many far-reaching and economic and financial ramifications. And as first speaker, my job is to uncontestably prove just that. Our second speaker will zero in on issues of security and efficiency of the system. Now, Mr. Chair, you and I both know that there is absolutely no such thing as a government-funded service provided free of charge to the public. This is a myth and a fallacy combined. Financial Times 2015. Truth be told, goods and services are not free. Free wireless, just like subway lines, roads, and sewer systems, must be paid for. The Federal Trade Commission estimates that it will cost governments millions, and in some cases, billions of dollars to set up the infrastructure, purchase the equipment, and to handle the ongoing operating costs of the free wireless network. While users may not need to pay to access the wireless network, there are dire financial implications. Hampton and Gupta, 2008, puts this argument into perspective quite nicely. This is what they said, and I quote, "In an ideal world, wireless should be free and should be a government-funded service. But in these hard times, it is incredibly naive to think that they should be able to provide such a service without raising taxes." Meanwhile, Professor Joseph Furr coined his objection of governments providing free wireless in public spaces in this way. "Nothing is free," he said. "Where do you think governments would get the money to fund it from?" That's right, Mr. Chair, our wallets. This is why it would be a huge mistake for governments to provide free wireless in public spaces. It really won't be free. In fact, in the long run, it will be very, very expensive. Finally, we are living in tough and economically challenging times. All over the world, governments are struggling to balance their budgets. They have a responsibility to ensure that limited funds go to truly critical public services, such as law enforcement, health, housing, education, infrastructure, and to provide safety nets for the poor and vulnerable. Providing free wireless in public spaces is way down on a government's list of priorities. Should governments be using limited funds on such initiatives? Opponents, isn't this just a case of needlessly draining a country's depleted funds? Funds which could be better spent on more important and basic things? How does free wireless in public spaces help the poor and vulnerable? If they cannot afford wireless, chances are they cannot afford a device that can benefit from the wireless anyway. Mr. Chair, healthcare systems in many third world countries are in tatters. So says the World Health Organization, 2015. Many people are hungry and malnourished. Yet, our opponents expect governments in these countries to provide free wireless in public spaces. Well, I guess when people are sick, they just have to take 2 teaspoonfuls of free wireless 3 times a day, and they're good to go, no sir? And when they're hungry, they just have to fry free wireless and eat it with wind. So according to the saying, they don't have to beat up. I thank you.
The second proposition speaker.
In this technological age, no one should be left behind. Therefore, government should provide wireless internet in public spaces. According to the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly, access to internet is now considered an essential commodity. The Assembly states that internet should be available to all, regardless of age, place of residence, or income. Government should recognize this as a right, both in law and in practice. The same source states that internet has made it much easier for people to access freedom of expression, association, assembly, and other basic civil rights. For this reason, internet access for all with a minimum standard of service should be a public goal. One sure way for government to reach this goal is by providing free Wi-Fi in public spaces. According to the CARICOM Secretariat, access to internet is a top priority area for governments across the region. Increased access ensures improvement in health, education, tourism, and agricultural sectors of the region. Therefore, government should provide free Wi-Fi in public spaces. But judges, why public spaces? Public spaces are frequented by a large portion of our country's population on a daily basis. They are accessed by males, females, the young, the elderly, the unemployed, the underemployed, all with the potential to use this service in ways that can enhance their life and livelihood. Free Wi-Fi in public spaces can therefore reach a wide cadre of people simultaneously, according to Mr. Brent McIntosh, head of IP transmissions at Lime. Prime Minister Honorable Dr. Keith Mitchell states that free Wi-Fi in public spaces is worth the investment, in that it creates a more informed citizenry that can be aware of what is going on around them at all times. Furthermore, providing access to free Wi-Fi in Grenada is directly in line with the ICT goals and visions for our country. As such, the benefits certainly outweigh the costs. So states Mike Sylvester, Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. In agreement with this stance is Ms. Krista Medford, Project Manager of the NTRC, Mr. Brent McIntosh, Head of IP MPLS Transmissions, and Mr. Donald Doris, Head of the Operations at Lime. Mr. Doris confirms that Lime provides free Wi-Fi in a few public spaces as part of their corporate responsibility, but to do so on a large scale is not in line with the company's goals. Judges, this is where governments come in. Opponents, a project of this very nature is already in process in Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and Grenada. The project is managed by government bodies like the NTRC, and funding is provided by the Universal Service Funds. This venture bears no, and I repeat, no direct cost to these governments. According to the project management, public spaces were chosen on a parish basis on internet penetration, access, and population size in these areas. Thus, the selected were viewed as priority areas. The benefits of such for private ISPs will increase sales of devices which utilize Wi-Fi, according to Mr. McIntosh. Persons will be more inclined to purchase devices to capitalize on the available sources. In essence, this is a win-win situation. My worthy opponent, are you suggesting that this project be stopped? Certainly not.
The second opposition speaker.
Shubo Halder, Chief Scientist at mobile security firm Appnox, and with a mere $100 device, recently walked into the Bengaluru airport in India and confirmed fears of security risks associated with putting free wireless in public spaces. He easily hacked into the computers of hundreds of users who were connected to the airport's free wireless. While he was at it, he also hacked into their WhatsApp conversations, credit card numbers, encrypted usernames and passwords, and gained access to corporate financial information and business plans. His $100 device had created fake Wi-Fi hotspots around the airport, which fooled travelers into thinking that they were connected to the airport's free wireless. So according to the scientists who conducted this exercise, this security issue is not only a problem in India. In fact, due to a lack of proactive security, many hackers and thieves worldwide are taking advantage of public free wireless to hack into unsuspecting users' bank accounts. This casts a dark shadow on the Indian government decision to put free public wireless in over 2,500 cities and towns across the country. It is because of this reason we must be wary of governments providing free wireless in public spaces. Mr. Chairman, governments providing free wireless in public spaces also brings to the fore the issue of privacy and censorship. William Binney, former official of the United States National Security Agency, has said that with the trillions of chats, conversations, and online messages being sent and received by U.S. citizens, all are intercepted by the government. Global Post, in its article, "The government spies on its own citizens, but these days, who doesn't?" has stated that 12 other governments who offer public free wireless do the same thing. These include Russia, China, the UK, Canada, and France. Cybersecurity expert Kevin Clark said it best. According to him, anyone who is connected to free public wireless provided by the government must do so under the premise that whatever they are doing is going to be viewed by a third party, the government. This is why many people fear putting the government providing free wireless in public spaces, because they fear that their lives may become an open book to the government to read and learn every intricate and personal detail about their lives. Finally, Mr. Chairman, governments have proved to be inefficient and bureaucracy. This is what caused privatization to gain so much momentum in the 1980s. I have heard stories, for instance, when our electricity company was once run by the government. Island-wide blackouts were like tablets prescribed by a doctor, 3 times a day. It was not until the company was sold to WRB that efficiency improved, and Grenlec now provides top-notch electricity service. This same fear of inefficiency causes many people to fear the government putting free wireless, because they fear that this will cause the wireless to run slowly or break down as more people access the network due to governmental red tapes in place, which hamper innovation and modernization. In the long run, what people have is a free wireless which frustrates users because it does not work well. This gives credence to the old saying, "Free thing doesn't good."
We welcome the opposition and proposition cross-examination speakers.
Opponents, no matter how governments go about doing this, bottom line, there will be a cost. And since governments, our government in particular, don't have a money tree to shake, where would they get the money from?
Well, we propose that we use the USF, which is a universal funding agency that will aid us in projects due to consisting of technological advancements in which ISPs have to give 1 to 5% of their revenue income.
Opponents, don't you think it would be wiser to invest this money in other aspects of the economy, like health, for example, or even education, instead of investing it in providing free public Wi-Fi, which is not an essential commodity?
I agree that health, for example, is an important sector. But I also say that we should allocate our resources properly, as my second speaker stated. Implementing Wi-Fi will help with all the sectors, and also you cannot put all of your funds and your money into one particular sector, and you can divide it equally in order for each sector to benefit efficiently.
Opponents, health and education are critical aspects that need funding. Providing free Wi-Fi is not necessary, really. Moving on. Your first speaker stated that free Wi-Fi will attract tourists to our country. So you mean to tell me that I will go to a country just because there is free public Wi-Fi? This is absurd.
Most people, when looking for places to vacation or when looking for places to stay, usually look for accessibility and communicational purpose functions which Wi-Fi can aid in.
Accessibility in terms of roads and such, not for free public Wi-Fi. Moving on. She said that people will be inclined to buy more phones, but opponents, in these harsh economic times, where are people going to get money to buy phones and they can't even afford it? So where are they getting the money to buy phones?
Can you please clarify?
Moving on. Are you aware of the risk involved in such a venture?
What risk?
Are you aware of the risk involved in putting free public Wi-Fi by implementing free public Wi-Fi?
My worthy opponent, you have stated that funding is a big issue, whereas there are countries in Africa with greater levels of poverty than there is in Grenada. However, their governments are moving toward providing free Wi-Fi. How then can you question our ability to do so?
Repeat your question.
You have stated that funding was a problem in installing free Wi-Fi. How then does this pose a problem for Grenada if countries in Africa who have greater poverty levels are moving toward this?
What evidence do you have that the government in Africa is willing to provide free public Wi-Fi?
Well, after the movement in Hong Kong, the Wi-Fi movement, 65 other countries are going toward and are also beginning to install, and some have installed, some of the mannerisms of this project. Africa is one of them.
But the opponents, are you aware that there are limited resources available here to the government? So why then would you use these limited resources to invest in free public Wi-Fi when it is not essential, when it is not really necessary? And your second speaker spoke about...
Excuse me, I have to...
I'm not asking you a question, I'm making a statement.
Continue.
In response to your question. Your second speaker stated that...
I'm sorry, I'm really pressed for time, I'm terribly sorry, but according to the World Bank, there is a correlation between the rate of internet access and a country's development. Please justify your position in light of this.
Yes, they said the country's access to internet. That doesn't mean that the government have to provide it, because no, there is no free public Wi-Fi, but people still have access to internet, don't they?
So my worthy opponent, why then, the government, provides facilities such as pastures and community centers, free water facilities, electrical poles, and for its citizens. Why then shouldn't the government include the provision of free Wi-Fi in public spaces?
Well, as you stated, there are already pastures and such for people to engage in recreational activities. By putting Wi-Fi in...
We welcome the opposition rebuttal speaker.
Your first speaker spoke about the importance of free Wi-Fi to students so that they can access online education forums, etc. But opponents, isn't there access to internet services in schools? Putting free Wi-Fi in public spaces will make it easier for hackers to access your private business than it will with you alone in your house. Proposition: if any one of you were the Prime Minister of a country that is going through an economic crisis, would you invest money into such an initiative as free wireless in public spaces when it can be invested into other sectors like health and education? If developed countries have failed with providing free wireless in public spaces, why then should developing countries venture into such an initiative? According to the IMF, countries such as the Republic of Congo, Liberia, and Haiti, at least 75% of their citizens live below the poverty line. Why then in these countries should they provide free wireless in public spaces when they cannot provide their own basic needs? The Maslow hierarchy of needs states that if people's basic needs are not satisfied, then they cannot move on to the next stage of needs such as love, wireless, etc. Again, proposition: if you are sick or hungry, would you study the fact that you have free wireless? Of course not. You will study the fact that you are hungry or sick and you want your needs met. So this side says no, that government should not provide free wireless in public spaces. I thank you.
We welcome the proposition rebuttal speaker.
Good afternoon, all. Judges, allow me to justify the route my colleagues and I have taken. They have stated in their first speech that the cost to provide free Wi-Fi would be very expensive. However, judges, the cost will not solely be on the government, but rather on government-owned bodies such as the NTRC through the Universal Service Fund. They have also stated that persons who cannot afford to pay for Wi-Fi might not even be able to pay for the device. But judges, the government cannot provide everything, and this is not their role. However, the role of the government is to provide resources and other things such as Wi-Fi to ensure that citizens are comfortable and to make choices in the betterment of its country. Judges, don't you think that economic, financial, agricultural, and educational growth is in the betterment of our country and others? Judges, this is exactly what will happen with an increase in the access of internet. Another point of concern is that in their second speech, our opponents have stated that Wi-Fi is an open gateway to hackers to get into persons' personal information. And judges, while we accept the horrible reality that this might be true, we strongly propose the education of our people to ensure they are able to protect themselves while browsing the internet. Judges, our opponents have also stated that right now the government are not providing free Wi-Fi and people are able to connect to the internet. However, judges, public spaces are regularly used by the public, which will ensure the Wi-Fi is used by a wide range of persons, young, old, rich, poor. What was rather disappointing is that our dear brothers and sisters have stated that the government Wi-Fi implementation can hamper innovation, but they seem to be unaware of the social, economic, and educational advancements that this can ensure.
We congratulate the teams moving forward to the semi-final round of the GRENLEC 2015 debates. Thank you for viewing the 2015 GRENLEC debates on this station.
There are sectors to develop, infrastructures to build, people to feed, Honorable Chair. Investing in harnessing renewable energy technology is literally biting off more than a catch.
It's an investment. It's not a luxury for the rich, but instead an imperative for the poor.
GRENLEC, energizing our Grenada.